Let's talk for a moment about something you've either done or probably have heard of or read about. RESTful APIs and JSON, made easy with Express. So what is REST? Big word alert. REST is an architectural style for building APIs. It stands for Representational State Transfer, which sounds really complicated. But all it really means is that when we handle HTTP requests, we decide that the verbs and the URLs mean something. When we build our APIs, we build them in a way that the verbs and URLs mean something, because it's up to us how we handle the requests on the server. We could come up with some complex way of sending and receiving all data through just GET requests. But REST is a way of saying, let's standardize on a way of using the HTTP requests so that when they're sent, when you read them, they kind of match what's actually happening. What do we mean by that? In our example that we've been working with, we pulled out HTML in response to GET requests, in response to POST requests, in response to JSON parsed requests. But let's just get rid of this AJAX post for a moment and just talk about what a RESTful interface would look like, what a RESTful API would look like. So I might, for example, have this posted JSON data that is a person. And within it, I would likely save to the database or something like that. And it might just be a /API/person address that's posted to with JSON format. And then I might have an API/person/ a particular ID, and it would go out and get that data from the database for that particular person. And then if I was to delete this person, I might have a delete, which is also an HTTP method. So I could say that same address, some ID that is given, which person to delete. And then in here I would delete from the database. So that's the general idea. This is the idea. These right here is an example of the idea of a RESTful API. And all that REST really means is that, well, sometimes we've built APIs where we just handle things, for example, in the URL, where I might say, well, /delete, and that will be the delete URL, and /post will be the post URL. But the problem is that it's hard to judge then what the HTTP request is supposed to do if you're just looking at the request. The HTTP request already has these verbs given to us so that we can respond to them. So having a RESTful API means you design your API so that it responds to the HTTP request verbs, the methods, in the way that it's expected. And you also look at the URL and understand what it's doing. So if I combine this URL, I see /person and an ID, and I combine that with the HTTP method being used, I can pretty much guess what this is going to do. I sent an HTTP request with a delete verb to a /person address with an ID. I can pretty much guess that this API is going to delete that person out of the database. And that's all the idea of a RESTful API really is. Typically, it accepts and returns JSON and deals with the standard HTTP request methods, the verbs, has decent, good URLs that are clear as far as what they do. And that makes it very easy to use. So when you hear the phrase, we can build a RESTful API, don't be confused or intimidated by it. It just means follow a good URL structure and deal with HTTP methods the way that one would anticipate. And that's made very easy with Express because it already allows us to deal with different methods in this very direct way, just calling a function, mapping to our URL, and giving it a callback. So it's very simple to build basic REST APIs with Express.